What is good, gang? We are back for State of the Franchise, and what better time to talk about the state of the San Francisco 49ers than getting the schedule released? Obviously, we've seen all the videos, everything coming out. Steph Sanchez doing the Nick Bosa on the 49ers reveal. You got to love it. But we're going to talk all things schedule, and of course, we're getting predictions, all those good things. We're going to chop it up right now. Drop your spicy sourdoughs in the chat. Let's get it. That's Jason Aponte. I'm Brad Graham. We're going to get into it all right now. What is going down, everybody? We got Jason Aponte in the building, dual stream on both channels. What are the vibes, Jason, with the schedule dropping? Getting you excited for the season?
Yeah, absolutely. The schedule drop is like another landmark moment, right? In the way that the NFL is scheduled everything in terms of you have combine, you have draft, you have rookie minicamp, you have schedule release, and then right around the corner is OTAs and minicamp. So it's one of those landmark dates that lets you know that we are very, very close to actual football and no more hypotheticals.
The offseason doesn't really start until after, I think it's rookie minicamp, right? Like
Right.
that's the last thing that we got. I think that's at the end of May because next week we have OTAs, if I'm
hmm
not mistaken. So we'll get rookies, veterans all together. Again, it's not mandatory, right? So it's who wants to show up. But as we know, there's a lot of guys out there working out, doing all that good stuff. But the focus of today's schedule is, or today's docket is the schedule. So, what were your initial reactions to seeing the schedule? Anything jump out to you when you first saw it?
Well, we knew the opponents. We obviously knew who the opponents were going to be. Obviously, last season, you know early on, it's just the way that they're staggered. And obviously, the first thing that jumps out to everybody right now is how many times the 49ers face a team off of a bye week. And this happened last season as well. And last season was the first time that I ever considered miles traveled and rest days and how many days of rest one side gets against the other. The 49ers were in the negative. Guess what? The 49ers still won how many games last season? 13. So I think they did pretty well. Everybody's worried about rest for the 49ers. Nobody's worried about rest for parents, though. We're the ones that actually need the rest, right? These guys are football players. They'll be all right. But I think that's the first thing that jumps out at you. It's like, what are the stretches of football that can be a little bit problematic or not problematic, but just remember last year we had the Bird Gauntlet. This year it seems like the toughest stretch for the 49ers kicks off with that Packers and Bills game back to back. And then you have the Bears in there, but it's all those games lined up, Miami, all those games in there that are really going to prove like where the 49ers end up landing with seeding and things like that. So for me, the schedule is just basically a time to look around, pick the games that you want to go to, put out win-loss predictions. But at the end of the day, we're not going to know what this team is or what other teams are until we start playing actual football games and we see the injuries piling up or we start to see how teams are playing. That's when we'll really find out how tough the schedule is. As of right now, the 49ers have the 23rd. Is it easiest or hardest? The 23rd hardest schedule, which means the eighth easiest. See, I'm bad at math. So even when you look at
I'm
these
not
games,
attempt, so I'm
this is
not even.
yeah, this is not good for math, but the eighth easiest schedule. And when you look at the opponents, obviously no game is a given. I don't know how you come to that conclusion, but I guess it's based on winning percentage, and then you always have to factor in what teams are going to start playing above their head and start moving in a different direction in terms of last to first, that type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think my first impression of the schedule again was I really wanted to see where the 49ers were going to be playing both the Bills and Green Bay because as we learned and have continued to kind of develop the case study on Brock Purdy is when he finds himself in rain games, there's definitely a correlation with some of his struggles being able to grip the ball. It's just something that we've noticed. It doesn't mean it's going to be like that for his entire career, but it is something that I want to be on the lookout for. And so I was really curious because obviously you get into late December in Buffalo, New York, and Green Bay. It gets really chilly. It gets real snowy. And there could be conditions to be on the lookout for. So that was one of the things that I really wanted to see. And unfortunately for the 49ers, it kind of falls in that you would know better than I would, being
Mm-hmm.
the resident East Coaster. So
Mm-hmm.
I'll ask you,
Yeah.
December 1st, 49ers at Bills, primetime game, by the way. What's your take? Is that going to be a cold one or a snowy one? What's the weather like right there at the beginning of December?
I'm absolutely 100% not going to that game. No shot.
You-
They're on December 1st. No, December in Buffalo, absolutely not. No shot. No chance. I'm not going to that game. I mean, God bless the 49er fans that will, but I'm not going to that game. Good God, man. Like, the end of December into January, right? They had to postpone a Buffalo Bills playoff game because of how much it snowed. Now, there's no way to predict what's going to happen on December 1st. But if I was doing the math and and doing recent history, living over here, and Buffalo is closer to Canada than anything, absolutely not. Oh, no shot I'm going to that game. None.
See, I wanted to go to that game. Like, I really wanted to travel to that. That's why I was like, oh, please be earlier in the year. And then it's like, because I sat in the rain for the game against the Packers, and that was pretty brutal. I'm not gonna lie. I was like,
Yeah.
so I don't know if I wanna deal with that. So that
Well,
one's gonna be TBD. We'll see.
it could just be cold. And for us East Coasters, 32 degrees isn't cold. Now, Californians, 32 degrees might be absolutely frigid. But you run the risk of going there and having it be 11 degrees with like -5 wind chill. It may not be raining, it may not be snowing. And obviously, cold and rain don't correlate to the same thing when it comes to playing football, because I think Brock Purdy has a harder time gripping a slick football than he
Right.
does a cold football, right? Because at least it's not
A
slick.
cold, hard, frozen ball. Well,
Right.
we don't really know, do we? He hasn't really played in the
In a
snow, I
cold
don't
game,
think.
no, not yet. So I guess
Yeah.
that's something that we may find out either that week or in Green Bay. But you run the risk of it being like -7, or it could just be 32. Now, if it's 32, 32 feels balmy to an East Coaster. Like, that feels balmy. Like, you don't have to wear too many layers. You should be all right. Get a beer or two in you, you're fine. But Californians, 32 degrees is crazy.
For me, as someone who loves to snowboard, I relish that you know type of weather. So that's something for me that I don't think would be too big of a deal. Especially you layer up, you get all your snow gear on. I could sit there. I sit in the snow. I mean, think about it, going up chairlifts, stuff like that. I literally have had my whole beard with icicles all over it. So
So
for
you're good.
me,
You're battle tested. You're battle
yeah,
tested.
I'm okay with it. It's just I'd prefer not to, like
Mhm.
if I'm gonna travel all the way across country, uh, like you said, damn near to Canada, I'm like, damn, I don't want to go and sit in the snow though to watch the game. That would be, but hey, sometimes you just got to do what you got to do. So we'll see how it works out.
If you make it, I'll come up, I'll drive up, and I'll hang out with you, but I'm not going to the game.
He said, I'll hang out with you indoors in
Yeah,
a
like
bar
let's
environment,
go,
but
right.
I ain't going.
Let's go get food. Let's, you know what I mean? Let's hang out.
We'll find a yard house. We'll be
We'll
good,
find a
and
yard house.
we'll
That's it.
figure
We're
it out.
good. That's it. We'll kick it. But I'm heading right back to the crib.
When you saw the schedule come out, and considering the way it's balanced and all these different types of things, obviously we already knew home and away opponents, but what was, when you kind of saw it all laid out, what game looks like the easiest one for you?
The easiest. So that's interesting, because obviously when you look at any game, you look at it and you say, oh, well, that's a walkover. But those are usually the games that the 49ers.
17-0. 49ers are
Right.
going to win it all.
20-0, man. Like, I mean, what are we doing here? The game that immediately jumps out at you is the New England Patriots. Just because obviously we don't even know who their starting quarterback is, the lack of weapons, first year coach. It feels like that's a game that the 49ers are set up to win. The next one that jumps out is Minnesota. So there was a report that came out of minicamp for Minnesota that there's a plan for JJ McCarthy to work through minicamp and go through and become the day one starter. But if he is not going through that system the way that they want him to, it would be Sam Darnold. So the first one that jumps out at me is the New England Patriots right off the bat, because just based on the roster, based on the turnover, based on the fact that it might be a rookie quarterback, that one. And then obviously Minnesota could be starting a rookie, but it could be, also Sam Darnold for a revenge game.
Yeah, I think those are the two games that jumped out to me as well. Because again, the probability is you're likely playing a rookie quarterback in both those scenarios, or like you said, Sam Darnold. So, and we know, listen, the Vikings, we thought we were going to stroll into town last year, right, on Monday Night Football, and take care of business. But they had other plans. So that's also another part of the schedule, right? It's like I look at it's really easy to be like, yeah, we could go 17-0. Like, look at all these games, and you can build up scenarios in your head where, like, yeah, we're on paper right now, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, but the 49ers are one of the best teams in the NFL, if not the best team in the NFL on paper. So it's like, yeah, we could beat all these guys, but there's trap games. Right. So that's always what I'm looking for when I see the schedule, because for me, there are multiple indicators for trap games. I think East Coast is kind of a higher probability for a trap game. I think the 10 a.m. East Coast start time brings up the probability of a trap game, because remember, like what we saw against the Browns, like we thought, oh, we're going to walk in there, beat them up. Nope, didn't work out. Obviously, elements can also play a part in that. But when you look at this schedule, trap games are always the team that you don't expect to beat you, right? We've had these conversations on the doing this show before. So what team or what game do you kind of see as a potential trap where 49ers should win theoretically, but all things considered, watch out, it's a trap?
Well, I also want to say that just because you're better than the team doesn't mean the circumstances during the game are going to lend itself to you, right? Like, I could think back to that Cleveland game. Obviously, the rain goes against you. Deebo Samuel leaves that game a little bit early. But if I was looking at a team that automatically jumps out at you as a team that last year was bad, could possibly be good, Chicago Bears. And it'll be at the end of the season.
You got weapons.
Oh yeah, they've got the weapons, right? And the Bears are going to be a sexy pick to go from last to first in a lot of people's minds. Obviously it's too early to surmise that without seeing Caleb Williams play, but it is later in the season when Caleb's got a bunch of games under his belt and he's there and he's healthy and he still has those weapons, and maybe the defense rounds into form, even though the defensive line isn't exactly great. But the Bears are the first one that jump out at you. I don't think a division game can be considered a trap game because all those games are tough. The Arizona Cardinals, regardless of how they are as a roster, they always find a way, aside from that one game last year in Arizona, to play the Niners, really tough. Think about the Joshua Dobbs game. Think about all the other times that there's been times where the 49ers, Colt McCoy, right? We're looking at this game like, oh, this is a walk in the park. The Cardinals always find a way regardless of the coach, and that goes into the division. But I think for one, I think it's the Bears, and I think it's because they're the team that is going to be pegged by everybody to go from worst to first or make a significant jump because of the weapons and because of all the hype around Caleb.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a good pick. Again, they have a lot of weapons. They've been quietly adding some pieces, and I've seen some people kind of like complain about this particular pick as being a loss and some other predictions. But I look at that. I'm thinking about it as I'm saying it, but like I look at the Buccaneers, the 10 a.m. start time in Florida.
That's a playoff team, though.
That's true.
So they're a play like when I see a
That's
team
true.
that was in the playoffs last
You're
year, I don't
thinking
think that could be a trap.
you always help me come back to earth on these trap games
Right.
because it's got to be a team that's not going to. So I think you actually picked the best one. I think the Bears, because when you're looking at the schedule, I don't think the Vikings are going to be able to come away and set the trap on the Niners. Neither the Patriots. You made great point about the division, and I think the division as a whole improved. I think every single
Yeah.
team
100%.
got better. And so the division isn't going to be a cakewalk as some people like to believe it's going to be.
Mhm.
And that really does leave. And like you said, the Bucks are an ascending team as well. And, even though the 49ers did take care of them last year at home,
Mhm.
I think you're right. I think it would have to be the Bears. They're the only team really that would have a shot at that, I would say. So I think you're spot on there.
And
So
the other thing, Brad, too, is in that Bucks game, yeah, the 49ers took care of them, but there were some hairy moments in that game as well, too, right? Like Jair Brown gets the interception in the red zone. Obviously, Talanoa Hufanga, ends his season there, unfortunately. But that game wasn't exactly like a blowout, like in where like it was wire to wire. There were some tense moments in that game where the Bucks fought back a little bit. So even still, like we can all know, and we all do know in our hearts that the 49ers are better than the Bucks, but they were a playoff team. And there were stretches in that game where that game got a little hairy too. So again, tossing in the East Coast, tossing them being over there in Tampa Bay, I think all those things kind of bring the game a little bit closer, but you still have to have the 49ers favored as they are in every single game on the schedule right now.
what do you think about the Chiefs Cowboys game stacked on top of each
Mhm.
other? No prime time for that Chiefs game though.
Yeah, well, Tom Brady's going to call that game, so I think that's pretty cool. Um, I don't know. Honestly, I don't fear the Cowboys as much because when you look at how the Cowboys have built themselves in the offseason, it's really just been Tyler Guyton and that draft class and Ezekiel Elliott that have been their additions. That is it. That same Cowboys team that was walking through that door last season is going to walk through that door again. And they're going to add Trayvon Diggs back, right? So they don't worry me as much. The Cowboys are still the frauds that we all believe they are. Ezekiel Elliott isn't moving the needle for me. Tyler Guyton is a good player, I think, but it's just their draft class. It's essentially the same exact Cowboys team. Now the Chiefs are interesting because we have this whole Rashee Rice thing going around about suspension, six to
There's a
eight
couple
games.
things going
Right,
around over the Chiefs right now.
right. So what? Yeah. Oh, don't. No, leave that other one
Yeah,
alone,
no,
please.
yeah, we're
Leave
not
that.
going to
Like,
talk
yeah,
about that.
we're
I'm
not
just
talking
saying
about that. Yeah, I
we're
just
not talking about
again,
that.
again, kickers don't deserve rights. They shouldn't be allowed to speak. But when you look at this team and you look at Rashee Rice was actually really coming on at the end of the season. Now he may not be playing in this game based on whatever the suspension is handed down from the NFL. They
Right.
did add Xavier Worthy. Travis Kelsey's another year older. Look, the 49ers are favored in that game right now. In Mike Clay's predictions, which we're going to get into, their stat predictions, 60% chance that he's got them winning that game, right? And I think that anybody right now, it's hard for us to pick the 49ers to win those games because we haven't seen them do it. And I think if you believe the 49ers can win, they absolutely can. They just haven't found a way to get it done in like the last four. I think the last time the 49ers have beaten the Chiefs was when Alex Smith was the quarterback. Unfortunately, they haven't beaten them when Patrick Mahomes has been there. Obviously, the one game is the Jimmy Garoppolo game in Arrowhead where he tears his ACL. And then you have the home game this past season. Then you have those two other games that we don't think about.
The
But
Chiefs
yeah,
have really just been a pain in our ass for this whole regime. Like, it's crazy.
my thing is the same way that I say the Cowboys can't call the 49ers their rivals because they can't beat us is the same reason that I don't think that the 49ers can call the Chiefs their rivals until they get one. You
I
got to
agree.
get one.
I don't
You got to
really
get
look at the Chiefs as a rival.
They're not a rival.
They're a thorn in my side. That's what they
Right.
are.
Right. They're not rivals. Like the Cowboys can't call us rivals when you come in and you get smoked by 30. Like you're not a rival. It's a one-sided beef. You hate us. We don't even think about you. It's a one-sided beef. The Cowboys are like, we're rivals. And we're like, yeah, pipe down, little guy. Like, no, you're not a rival. Like, you have to win a game. Seattle, like even Seattle, we're rivals. No, you're not. No, you're not. No, it's done. Like, you're not. You're a little bro. Like, don't. You're not a rival. So unfortunately, I have to keep that same energy when it comes to the Chiefs and the Niners. The Niners have to get one. So it's not again. That's a game that must win, whatever, that's up to you. But the 49ers have to get one. They had to get one and finish it. So I think that's kind of where we're at.
So I've heard a lot of, see a lot of fan commentary about that particular game. I've seen a lot of that game doesn't matter. Just win the Super Bowl, right?
Yeah.
Like it's a regular season game. Doesn't matter. Who cares if, just get it done, win the Super Bowl, right? Of course. Like that's where we're at as a fan base, as a regime, organizational philosophy is win the Super Bowl. Like we
Right.
all know it's not, we're not sugarcoating, we're not being biased, we're not being none of that. It's everyone knows what the ultimate goal is here. And not even the goal, the expectation, even.
Mm.
But just like we talked about, the Kansas City Chiefs being thorns in our sides. And do you believe there could be a psychological advantage by being able to actually beat this team that you haven't been able to beat regular season or Super Bowl? Does it matter or does it not matter to
It
win
does.
this game against the Chiefs in the regular season?
It does. It's like a basketball player who's a shooter. You're missing your shot. Your shot is off a little bit, but you get a free throw to go down into the hoop or a layup, and you see the ball go through the hoop, and you start to build your confidence back up. It absolutely
Like Klay
matters.
Thompson sometimes.
Right, 100%. It absolutely matters. The Dallas Cowboys, they walk into this building and they're just like, oh, we're going to get smoked because they haven't been able to do – they have like the one game that was close was the first meeting in the playoffs, the Jimmy Garoppolo game that in their stadium, that shouldn't have been anywhere near close. That game was nowhere near as close as the score, right? And then you have the Sunday night game, and then you have the playoff games. The 49ers own them. They've got to get one before they can start to feel like, okay, we can do this again, right? Like with the 49ers have played the Chiefs much closer. But until you get it done, you can't just say, oh, there are no moral victories. Oh, well, we were close. No, it's like you got to see the ball go through the hoop so you could your jumper could start working again. So yeah, you've got to get this one because then you can point back to this. If you do meet again in the Super Bowl, you can point back to this game and look, this is how we attacked them. This is how we did well. This is what they're going to adjust to. All of those things matter. So I think 100%. I think any 49er fan would be lying to themselves if they thought that this game was just a whatever game. You're not going to get a Super Bowl ring back by winning, but you are going to gain some respect and some momentum and feeling like you can get it done.
We talk about it all the time, like when we're evaluating players and prospects, and it's like, yes, the physical tools and measurables are very important, but we're also trying to analyze these players from a psychological standpoint because we understand that you can be a Kadarius Toney. You can have elite physical measurables and like you can do whatever you want on a football field. But we understand guys like Kadarius Toney aren't ever going to be the greatest at their position because they aren't built that way. They aren't built for the game to put maximum effort, have the right mindset, handle situations properly. It's just not how he's wired. That's why he goes haywire constantly. And I don't need was he a healthy scratch for the Super Bowl?
Yep.
He's one of the most talented players on the field.
Yeah.
Not being able to play because he isn't wired that way. So I don't think, again, we talk about it between me and you quite a bit, but I think this is, again, another psychological aspect to why football is more than just being physical. It's like you talk about momentum in sports, you talk about momentum, like this is like a psychological momentum thing where the 49ers on the wrong side of playing the Chiefs, just like you perfectly talked about the Cowboys being on the wrong side of the 49ers. It's this hill you have to climb and it weighs on you. And this team has lost not only in the regular season, but 2 Super Bowls to this team. And if their goal is to get back and win the Super Bowl with a huge probability that it will be against the Chiefs, they could be playing them a second time. You got to get that win, man. Like you just got to. You have to get it done. I think back to the regular season game that the 49ers last played against the Chiefs, where Mecole Hardman has 3 end-around touchdowns. But it was alumni week, man. You had the 2012, team that made it to the Super Bowl. The hype, the pregame atmosphere was so electric. To then go out and see that perform, it was like you could feel the tension and the disappointment of the collective 60,000 people in the stadium. And that weighs on you over time. So I agree. You got to get this win. You have to free yourself and climb that mountaintop. So when you're staring at that mountaintop again, you know you can do it. And I think that's so huge for this team moving forward.
Yeah, and even still, you want to stack quality wins against playoff teams, right? Like you want to show that you're battle tested. You don't want to lose any of these games to the Chiefs, the Lions, the Packers, the Cowboys, right? Like all these teams that have been playoff teams. You don't want to lose any of those games either. You want to. What the funniest part about the way people analyze teams, and this goes for analysts and fans, is quality wins. Because if you blow through all of the teams that are not good, hello Dallas Cowboys, and flop against all the good teams, then no one believes in you going forward. No one believes that you can do anything. So you want to stack these battle-tested wins. You want to stack all of these wins against playoff teams because people, analysts, pundits, fans are all going to say, who have you beaten? Who have you beaten, right? If the 49ers go out there and they wash all the teams that they're supposed to wash, but they lose to the Lions, the Packers, the Cowboys, the Chiefs, think about what people will say about that. So again, this isn't a strength of schedule thing. This isn't college football. Like when you blow out Hawaii, you move up like a bunch of spots. Or if you lose to like a top 5 team, you get knocked out. There's obviously wins or wins in the NFL, but we're talking about a resume. And you're talking about being able to predict going forward in the playoffs how you'll move. If you have a lot of bad showings against playoff teams, people aren't going to be as confident in just, flipping the switch. So I think, again, it's about being able to say, we have been battle tested against these teams. We beat good teams and we beat the teams we're supposed to beat.
I agree. And, obviously it's not going to have any impact for the 49ers for NFC seeding or divisional race or anything like that. But it's just one of those mental hurdles, man. Like you gotta get it. We talk about emotional letdowns all the time. That's an emotional letdown type of game. Like that's a game where I feel like, look at the Ravens, right? Like in that matchup, that was an emotional letdown. And it just felt like the 49ers never got back fully on the tracks. They were able to get it done in adverse situations, but they were humming leading into that game. And we talked the same thing about the Philadelphia Eagles when the 49ers smacked them back down to reality. It was an emotional letdown. This is an emotionally charged game. Mm-hmm. And so it matters as much as people say, oh, it's a regular season, it's a Super Bowl. No, it matters. So
I will say this. If there was some sort of genie or someone that could tell me, hey, the 49ers are going to get blown out by the Chiefs in the regular season, but they're going to get them back in the Super Bowl, obviously you would trade that one regular season loss for that. I think that's the way people are approaching it and saying it's just a regular season game. But unfortunately, we don't have a crystal ball. We don't have a genie. You have to win every game and win as many games as you can. So I agree with you 100%. But I would 100% trade a blowout to the Chiefs during the season if it meant we got them back in the Super Bowl.
100%. I think at this point, anyone connected to the 49ers would do some things to get a Super Bowl. I don't know exactly what those things are, but we would do some things because we're tired of being tortured with what appears to be phenomenal success, and then the rug just gets ripped out. What's worse, Jason? Being a crappy team and knowing you're crappy, mm-hmm. or being a really good team and just not being able to get it done?
All right, being a crappy team has no pressure behind it. You can watch your games on Sunday and you feel no type of way, right? So if you want pressureless
you're ready
football,
for the loss, you're like, right. Whatever.
If you want pressureless football, then go for that. But I'll always take being the team that has a chance to be in there and is being discussed in that way and is always in those games. And I'll take and I'll take the blood pressure and the heart attacks that come with all of that. I much rather love it here than I did before Kyle Shanahan was here, or even that first year when Kyle Shanahan was here. So I'll definitely take being a team that's going to be in the mix every single year, regardless of how it ends.
Just had to ask. Let's get to a
Yeah.
couple super chats that we
Mhm.
have. Mac Daddy says, I see us going
Undefeated.
undefeated in division and make the playoffs, but I see a lot more losses due to Super Bowl hangover and body tiredness and being emotionally tired. What do you think about that last part
Well,
kind of being the hangover part of it?
the last 2 seasons, the 49ers have played about 40 games. 40 games, right? That has a toll on you a little bit. Now, that's one piece of the puzzle, but I wouldn't automatically just say, oh, they're due for a letdown because of that. I just think too much of this culture. I just think too much of this coaching. I think too much of the guys in that locker room to think that it's going to be something where they just, I don't know if this is what he's saying, like fall off a cliff or anything like that. I don't think that. But I do see that there's going to be chances at times for games where, things happen, weird things happen where they're like it's a walk in, like we should walk in, walk out with a W. Doesn't happen, right? 49ers
Right.
lose to the Falcons and Marcus Mariota, things like that happen, right? Things like that happen, right?
Yep.
But
Hmm.
there is a little bit something to the idea. The 49ers have played 40 games in the last 2 seasons, right? And that's almost 3 seasons for certain teams that don't make the playoffs. So yeah, I mean, it's tough, to gauge how that will affect them. Of course, it's a piece of the puzzle, but I wouldn't say that it's an overarching thing where I'm super nervous about it just because I believe too much in what the 49ers have built and how they prepare.
I hate to say this, but it's like this core group of 49ers has experienced so many heartbreaking losses
Oh yeah.
that I would have to assume that a part of them is kind of numb. Just like we
Yeah.
are as 49er fans. We're a little bit dead inside. There's a part of us that is waiting to be reborn when they lift that sixth Lombardi. But until then, there's that cold, hard spot in the center of your stomach that's just kind of dead. I would
Yeah.
have to imagine the 49ers players have that a little bit. I think that I would imagine the Super Bowl hangover was the 2020 season. Now, obviously, there's a lot of different variables that went into that 2020 season, but that felt like a Super Bowl hangover. Like that felt like just gross across the board. But there's obviously a lot of outside factors
Right.
that went
Like
into
no training camp, the entire
that. No
team,
training.
the entire team
The
losing
world
themselves to
was
MetLife
going into
to
collapse.
right. The entire team losing their season in MetLife. Like there's a lot of
Yeah,
things that
there's a
like
lot of
happened in
things
that way. Yeah. But the
for
training
sure.
camp thing was a little bit of like, um, it takes a little while for them to like, hey, get into the groove, all that stuff. And it was just a weird year, honestly. It was just a very weird year. And then, obviously the injuries don't help. So yeah. I think
But
I think
I
2020
also
is weird.
kind of look at the way the NFC Championship game happened against Philly. I'm less concerned about this group for being having like a hangover, if that makes sense. Like I
Right.
feel like they're so battle tested that I think they'll just pick right back up.
Mhm.
Now, could they get tired physically? Of course. Like that can definitely happen. And again, if you lose games like week 7 against the Chiefs, there could be an emotional tiredness aspect to it. I'm less concerned over the Super Bowl hangover. Like I expect the 49ers to show up week 1 against the Jets firing on all cylinders. Like I'm
Right.
not expecting like any kind of no, I'm expecting them to actually be ramped up a notch, just
Right.
kind of based on the intensity and the urgency of this season, right?
And And Brock Purdy gets a full offseason to work with his receivers, not worry about an injury. I think we're downplaying the idea that Brock Purdy can be better next season, which can offset many of any other deficiency you have, right? So, kind of going to the point of when you pay a quarterback because when your defense is lacking a little bit, the quarterback lifts you up. The quarterback does a little bit more. The offense carries a little bit more. So there's two ways to look at this. You can look at this and say, hey, Super Bowl hangovers bound because how many teams make it year after year in the same spot? The Chiefs obviously have done it the last 2 seasons. But what about an entire offseason where Brock continues to get stronger, masters the playbook even more, builds more rapport, especially with the new younger receivers, and comes out and he plays better. Doesn't have to have a better statistical season. You can see better with your eyes in the way processing all that stuff, which he was already good at. So there's 2 ways to look at it. It's literally, hey, you can say whatever, there's going to be a hangover. Obviously, you played all these games, but there's also a world where the 49ers can see improvement from their quarterback in his second full season starting, and that can offset any sort of deficiencies you have on either side of the ball.
I also think the O-line can improve as well.
No. You're not allowed to say that. You're not allowed to say that Colton McKivitz can improve. You're not allowed to say that any
people get mad at me, Jason. I've been like, guys, like there's a world that exists where the whole offensive line improves. And
no, it's impossible, Brad. It's impossible, Brad. There's no chance that anyone on this offensive line can improve. Don't even utter that sentence. It's impossible, man. It's impossible.
Like, I got people getting heated at me because they signed Chris Hubbard. They're like, "Oh, what are we doing? It's May. We're addressing the O-line." I'm like, guys,
competition is good. Competition is good. Right.
Just relax.
Right.
We'll figure it out.
Right.
But I think, again, continuity is key with the O-line. And we're not going to go on a tangent on the O-line.
No. Stay away from O-line. I don't want to talk O-line. I don't want to talk about offensive line at all. There's no chance
for the dead period after OTAs and minicamp.
There's no chance Colton McKivitz can get better. There's no chance that somebody supplants Jake Brendel and is a little bit better at center. There's no chance that Aaron Banks could get a little bit better. There's no chance that a whole season with Feliciano at right guard could be better than going to him later in the season. And Trent Williams is bound to fall off a cliff now, right? Like, that's like, it's just, no, let's not talk about it. Just go to something else, please.
Okay. We'll go to the next super chat. How about that? Roberto Davis says, if you just beat losers and lose to winners, you are the Cowboys.
Ding, ding, ding. Ding, ding, ding. Hey, you can beat up on the NFC East all you want, pal. But we know when it's time for you to play a team that is actually very good, not the New York Football Giants, not the Washington Football Commanders, whatever they're calling themselves. None of that matters when you have to go against the Lions, the Packers, the Niners, or any good AFC team. Watch them go into Buffalo, get railroaded. That is who the Cowboys are.
He said, Brad Brendel, okay, the ginger beard. Oh, it's the we did talk about this, right? The Jason A.
I'm tired of this. Who do I look like? Ricky Pearsall, Austin Rivers, Chet Holmgren. Y'all got to make up your mind at this point, like who I look like, because it's just too much now at this point.
Dude, it was hilarious when the whole debate with Austin Rivers popped back up. Dude. And I was starting to see his picture all over I haven't seen a picture of Austin Rivers, I don't even know in how long. And I'm just like, dude, that's Jason Aponte.
Dude, sometimes I wake up and people are just like watching NBA Today and they're like Jason Aponte on my screen. It's enough. I don't look like Austin Rivers. He looks like me. Please, guys, this harassment has to stop.
Oh my gosh. So good. So good. I love it. All right. Let's talk about week 17 matchup. What do you think when you see Lions right there at the end of the year?
I think the NFL would love for that game to be for the number 1 seed.
Yeah.
I think everybody would love that.
Yeah.
When we talk about rivalries and we talk about teams that haven't gotten it done, the Lions and the Packers haven't gotten it done. But they're on the cusp of making it a rivalry if they're able to finish once. Like if they finish once, right? So the Packers are close, right? And I think that's something that I think we're talking about down the line because the Packers are young, right? And they have a quarterback that's very young. Who knows what Jordan Love is going to do in his second full season. And then the Lions, I think, in the NFC, have as close to a roster as the 49ers do in terms of playmakers and everything. Obviously, we know who's better than who, but I'm just talking about collective roster, especially after their draft and getting 2 stud corners, in my opinion, right? Like adding to that defense already with Hutchinson, right? Like that was
kind of their weak spot, too. They were weak at corner.
Right. So they're close, right? Like they're real close. So if we're talking about budding rivalries, it's the Packers and the Lions, but they have to win a game to turn it into a rivalry. And I think, again, that's a game that I think the NFL would love for it to be for the number one seed for home field advantage. I think everybody would love to see that because they are so close and that game was so close. Let me tell you this. Being in Detroit for the draft, when people would see my media pass, they would ask, hey, who do you cover? And it would all be Lions fans. And I'd say the 49ers, they looked like they wanted to beat the hell out of me and just tear me apart. And I'm just like, listen, I didn't do it. I didn't do it. Like I didn't play in the game. Like, don't take your aggression out on me. So Lions fans really have this thing for the 49ers, and they were kind of just talking about the 49ers the entire time when I was out there talking to them.
Well, now you're in even more trouble if you show your face in Detroit because you look like Ricky Pearsall, apparently. So,
oh my God,
good luck, pal. Good luck.
Enough.
We have another super chat from Strawberry. Says, reminder: this time last year, BP was still throwing towels. Jason, this was the most under discussed thing of the year last year, which to me is wild. But it was. Brock Purdy was analyzed through training camp like he was a perennial playoff quarterback that wasn't coming off a rookie year and a major surgery. So it kind of felt like it floated under the radar, and so he was analyzed very critically. To be honest, I feel like that helped him, though, kind of build that thick skin early on in the year because I think multiple players talked about how he was being covered in training camp during that time because they were getting pissed off by it for Brock. And obviously Brock has turned into he's got to be the most polarizing quarterback in the NFL right now, right? Yeah. Everyone's got an extreme opinion on him one way or the other. Jason, I ranked Brock Purdy as the 5th best quarterback in the NFL. I would say that's hot. That's generous. Like, that's high. I got eviscerated by 49er fans.
Yeah.
They said they challenged my intelligence. I had many tell me that he's number 1 in the NFL.
Okay.
And this isn't to get into a conversation about where Brock ranks, but it's just like, he's a very polarizing quarterback. And I'm like, I'm over here like, bro, I love Brock. Like, Brock's my guy, and he's been my guy, since we saw him come in against Miami. And I was like, I think he's 5. You can make the case. You can put CJ ahead of him because CJ is just a phenomenal quarterback. I was like, with what he's done as a winner and all these things, I like him at 5. Oh, you put Brock at 5? Like, oh my gosh, dude, I got cooked by some fans.
There's no Brock Purdy opinion that won't lead to that, though. In the same way that you said, everything is going to be very extreme. There's still the people that right now are like carried by the offense and carried by this and carried by that. By the way, if you guys want to check out some really good film breakdowns, I've done 2 on the channel in which I explain what's a check down and what's not a check down and what's your first progression and how good Brock is with all of that. So if you want to check that out, I show play art, I draw all over it, and I show you guys exactly what you're supposed to be looking at on defense. And I came away when I started to entrench myself a little bit more into the X's and O's, even more impressed because everybody just says, oh, that was just it was just a 5-yard pass to Christian McCaffrey. Yeah, but the progression goes him reading cover 2 to that side and sitting it down and being on the same page as Brock and taking the free money, which is a 10-yard pass. Now, in the same breath, I can show another play in which he goes to Christian McCaffrey because 1, 2, and 3 are covered. So everything's not built the same. And the people that have the most extreme opinions about quarterback play and Brock don't understand how that works in terms of progression, who it's supposed to go to. Kyle designs it right away to get it to Christian McCaffrey. If you recognize the same thing I recognize, go there with it. And you give Christian McCaffrey a choice route to run left, right, down. He recognizes it. He sees it like the quarterback sees it. And in another breath, you have him to the right side because he's there as a check down option. All passes to the running back and all are not created the same. There are times when Brock throws guys open. There are times when the scheme gets guys wide open and Brock delivers the ball on time. It's so in between, and that's why the extreme opinions, one way or another, are kind of insane. I'm not trying to like, down talk to anybody who doesn't understand all that stuff, but I've learned far more when I started getting into the X's and O's and doing these film breakdowns and actually understanding what the coverage is showing and what the progressions are, that he's so good at processing that's the part that you can't lose out like sight on right now. I think obviously right away, Brock Purdy's a top 10 guy, right? Top 10.
I think
And
we can all agree that he's top 10.
Yeah.
Everything else is subjective at that point.
Exactly. So top 10, and then wherever you want him in that 10, that's up to you. But right. I think it's indisputable that he's 10. And I do think that, again, when we talk about quarterback rankings, the elite tier gets smaller and smaller year to year, right? Because 2 years ago, you would have said it was Burrow. I don't know if you can put him in there right now because he's injured more often than not, right? Josh Allen at times has these moments where you're just like, there it is. And then, or what the hell was that, Josh? So I don't know if you can have him in there. The discussion really takes a weird turn with Justin Herbert and Brock Purdy because we all see the physical gifts with Justin Herbert, but when are we going to have a discussion about Justin Herbert? And like sometimes when there's certain things where you're just like, my goodness, man, like I believe in you way more than what you've shown. So the top 10 is indisputable. Where you have him in 10 is up to you, and it's up to how you are looking at all the other players. And every week, all those guys are interchangeable. I think after 6 or 7, 8 to 15 is interchangeable every single week, right? Mm-hmm. One week, 8 could be Jared Goff. 1 week, 8 could be Kirk Cousins. 1 week, 8
Tua 1 week.
Right, exactly. So it's you have the tier of the guys that you want to start your franchise with. Let me say it like that. Not elite. You want to have if you were starting a franchise, right?
That's
and then you have
quantify it.
Right. And then you have starting quarterbacks. And you have to figure out like how you stagger those guys. And I think that's the part that's lost in this discussion. It's got to be this and it's got to be definitive. I think week to week, you're going to see some different things and you're going to start to see, certain guys rise, drop. And 1 week, 8 could be Dak. It's strange because everything is interchangeable week to week with the quarterback rankings.
And everything isn't apples to apples. If you're really trying to attack it and rank it, there's a lot of nuance to it because you're taking into physical ability, team structure. You're taking into account statistics. There's so many different variables that go into what makes an elite quarterback. Like there are plenty of quarterbacks that are way more physically gifted than Brock. That doesn't mean they're better quarterbacks than Brock. Sam Darnold is definitely a more physically gifted quarterback than Brock, but he's definitely not better than Brock, not even close. No. So it's again, how do you weight these conversations? It's funny we got off on a tangent on that, but it's just funny just how polarizing he is. And even amongst 49er fans, like the fact that I had people being like, I'm so disappointed in you, Brad. I thought you liked Brock. I thought Brock was
putting him 5?
Can't believe you.
Why do you hate Brock Purdy?
Putting him at 5. I can't believe this, Brad. I cannot fathom you putting him at 5.
Who did you put up? All right, so you put Mahomes. I'm guessing you put Josh Allen. I'm guessing you put Lamar. And I'm guessing you put CJ Stroud.
Burrow.
Okay. Now.
And then I had 5 as pick your poison. I said, I think CJ Stroud's phenomenal.
He's really good.
Especially from a physical tool. I was actually just watching all like some of his big throws he's making. I was like, oh my God, dude, this guy's
he's really good.
Different. But I was like, based on what Brock has kind of been able to do under his own individual circumstances, I would say CJ is more physically gifted than Brock. That's not up for debate. And again, I like to make the Batman versus Superman comparison. They're both super, but they're super in different ways. But I was like, with what Brock's done, with taking into his resume, how far he's gone in the playoffs, what he's been able to do under his circumstances, I was like, I got him weighted above CJ, but you can make the case that CJ's more talented than him. Mm. But again, I'm taking in all the things like the efficiency numbers, the way he wins. I was like, I'll put him there at 5. but you can make the case he could be below CJ. People like they lost their freaking mind, man.
And with Burrow, look, when he's on the field, Burrow is in this discussion based on aura. Let me explain, right? It's aura more than anything because he's been injured. And part of playing the quarterback position is being able to absorb hits and continue to keep yourself healthy somehow. Now, look, the Bengals have done him no favors with the offensive line. None. And the young man takes a lot of hits. But Burrow's there because of what you've seen when he's on the field. Obviously, they made a Super Bowl in one of those years. But when do we start getting into a discussion about availability as your best ability? And sure, the offensive line has something to do with it. But honestly, the Burrow thing is a little bit closer than we think. And it doesn't necessarily have to be something that is based on, what you've seen on the field. A lot of it is, man, Burrow's got it, right? He's got it. You can't teach it, right?
We saw it we saw it in person. Like I saw him play the 49ers and I was like, damn, it was my first time seeing him. I was like, all right. I was like, he's pretty damn good. He's got something to him, right? The aura, like you said, there's something to him.
Well, and I think this is a perfect way. I think we have more super chats, but there's a way to transition into these stat predictions because it's gonna be funny when we get to Brock Purdy because Mike Clay of ESPN, yes, he does fantasy football, but I do think that he does a great job of understanding play call tendencies and understanding the game very well. But he put out all his stat predictions, and I want to go through all that stuff, real quick. If you want to just take those other super chats, and then we can roll into this as well too.
Yeah,
I think we got
get
some
it.
other ones.
Hashtag Jason Rivers.
Please, I'm just a man. Stop bullying me on the internet. My God.
Josh says, how can you put CJ over Purdy after one season when Brock came in as a practice squad quarterback and off a big time injury? I mean, that's kind of like what I was saying. Like I would say weighted based on what he's done, I would put Brock over him, but you can make the case. Like it's not making a case. Like CJ is a much more physically gifted thrower of the football than Brock. And that's not a knock on Brock. It's just the reality of the situation.
And when you see a quarterback perform that well in the rookie season, the idea is, hey, he's only going to get better. So much of what you see about CJ Stroud and how people are viewing him, which I think is pretty correct, is what you think he's about to do. What you think he's about to do because there is another bump. And because they've added a better running back in Joe Mixon. They've added Stephon Diggs no matter where he is in his career. Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins, Tank Dell, you've given him all these weapons. You have to expect growth. So I think that's another thing, right? But in the same breath, I can make the same argument for Brock. Is full offseason, no injury, building rapport. He could be better as well, too. But I think when you see someone who walks in the door, year one, high pick, and he knocks your socks off like the way that CJ Stroud does, it gets people excited. And I think that's kind of where we are with that. Yeah, it gets you going. It gets the people going alive. All right.
Hey, he's got an electric arm. What do you expect? We got one more. All right. Roberto says, who cares where Brock is ranked 1 through 10? What is important is we have a top 10. Thank you, Roberto. Yep. Thank you so much. That's is what's fair. Lost in the conversation. You must have a top 10 quarterback to win it. Thank you. Like this was like why I just looked at the ranking where he was number 2 and I was like, that seems too high to me. I'm going to just kind of reorder this. But at the end of the day, like if I'm putting him at 5, you talk about he's still in the top tier of quarterbacks in the league. If we ranked Trey Lance at 5, we'd be so excited. Oh, we hit on Trey. Top 5 quarter. Like we would be high.
Saying his name.
That's why I was like, why are people yelling at me that I put Brock at 5? Like, is this a real thing? I was expecting the opposite. I was expecting people to be like, that's way too high for him. Right. And I was like, oh, well, I can't win these days, but it is what it is.
The thing is, the 49ers are so good that they don't need Brock to be the best quarterback in football, whatever that means to you, right? If he operates the offense in the way that he did, the 49ers were a few minutes away from finishing the job. So he just needs to be Brock, which is enough. Again, the quarterback arguments they're great for content. They're great for discussion. They're great for engagement. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter because if Brock plays the way that he did last year, or even gets better, which I believe he can, the 49ers will be fine. They're going to be fine. So I don't care who you have over him. I really don't. Like, I don't like engaging in that. But if you have a quarterback who's operating this offense with the weapons, with everything that they have around them to this degree, who cares? I don't care where you rank him. That's up to you.
And people don't talk about Brock being Kyle proof. That is a real thing. You got to be Kyle proof, and Brock's got that. Where do you rank that amongst these quarterbacks? Anyways, let's get into this projection. Set up, what do we got? Mike Clay here.
Mike Clay of ESPN.
What he's seeing.
Mike Clay of ESPN, again, he does fantasy, but I think he does a really good job of understanding play call tendencies, offenses, again, understanding scheme. It's not just a fantasy guy punching the numbers, in my opinion, right? Like a lot of guys who are just worried about like, oh, how many fantasy points? I think he does a really good job. I think what I first want to point out is obviously we're going to start with quarterback. Brock Purdy's only going to play 15 games this season, Brad Graham. That means the 49ers are going to have 2 games of no Brock Purdy, essentially meaning I think that Brock Purdy, I think that he believes the 49ers are going to lock up the number 1 seed very early on. And when you look at the projected,
think he's accounting for injury potentially?
Maybe. All right, so maybe one game.
To your point though, when you look down the list, no offensive player looks like they surpass 15 games, which is interesting.
I think it's going to be 15 games because I think he believes the 49ers are going to wrap this thing up. Now, if you look in the top right corner, weekly score predictions, the 49ers are favored in every single game, right? The lowest percentage that they're at is 60% against Kansas City and Miami, right? Mm-hmm. But they're projected for 12.3 wins, which is the number 1 rank, strength of schedule 23rd. So I think what he's saying is the 49ers get this done in 15 games and they don't have to play the entire time. But what I do want to point out is this. And when we talked about this during the draft, and we talked about this in the offseason, and we talked about trust between Purdy and Kyle, it seems like Mike Clay believes kind of what we've been saying in terms of maybe a little bit more pass heavy. So in 15 games, he's got Brock Purdy throwing the ball 475 times. For context, Brock Purdy played 16 games last season, obviously took the last game off because the 49ers had it wrapped up, and threw the ball 444 times. That is an increase with 1 less game of 30 attempts. Okay. Now, where I'm going to have to disagree here is this.
Yards go down?
Yes.
Stay the same? Touchdowns
go
down?
This is where I disagree. If you have more attempts, obviously you can see an increase in yards. I guess he believes that the passing game will get less efficient. I don't agree with that. There's no way that Brock doesn't throw for 4,000 yards again, especially if he throws the ball 475 times. Now, touchdowns are down 31 to 25. Maybe he believes that it's, 16 touchdowns for Christian McCaffrey, 3 for Elijah Mitchell, 1 for Isaac Guerrero, 1 for Jordan Mason, 18 overall rushing touchdowns, with 2 of them going to Brock Purdy. So maybe it's the legs. 11 interceptions. Okay. With more attempts, obviously there's more chance for interceptions. It's just a numbers game, right? Because you're throwing the ball more. I wouldn't be upset with 11 picks. Again, 11 picks over 15 games, that's fine. A decrease would be remarkable, but 11 interceptions doesn't seem like it's going to be something that kills Brock Purdy or the 49ers at this time.
I wouldn't be worried about the 11 interceptions. It's more the touchdowns. I want to see that.
Yeah, so that's the part that I don't – the yards and the touchdowns are the part that I vehemently disagree with. I don't see how you're going to throw the ball more and have less yards and have 6 less touchdowns. That's the part that I really didn't get from here. But I did like to see the attempts go up because I think that Kyle is going to turn this thing over to him a little bit more, even though they are still going to be primarily a run-first team.
Dang, he knocked Ayuk too. Barely 1,000 yards. What did Ayuk have? 1,300 receiving
1,300.
yards.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I'm just going off of memory. If he has 75 receptions,
that's about what he had last season.
That's about what he had last year. So
I think the way that he's thinking about it is that they can't duplicate how efficient they were last season because they were historically efficient, right? And maybe that's an argument, but I don't know if you're going to see a decrease in passing yards and then you'll see. Well, you have to think about it like this, right? So if the passing yards go down for Brock, isn't that going to inherently knock down the receivers as well? but I just
Well,
can't see
yeah,
a 300-yard discrepancy from
yeah,
Brandon Ayuk. Yeah, like that just
yeah,
seems drastic.
yeah.
Yeah.
Especially for same amount of receptions. Like
Yeah.
I think you would have to be closer to. I mean, you could always get into a variable, right? That would be lower, but that seems a little too low.
Yeah.
Just looking at it, and I think this is an interesting exercise. Obviously, knocks down George Kittle to
Yep.
846 yards when he broke 1,000 last year.
Yep.
So yeah, I would say that I agree with the attempts going up. The interceptions again with attempts going up aren't a problem to me. 11's fine, but
Mhm.
I would expect touchdowns to be closer to 40
Mhm.
than I would expect them to be 24. And then I would also expect, like you said, more yards as well. So
And what else is
interesting
interesting too?
exercise.
What else is interesting too, Brad, is last season Brandon Ayuk had 105 targets and literally had 75 receptions, the same amount. Now he's going to get 8 more targets and finish with the same amount of receptions, but have less yards. That's it. Just
Yeah.
that part just does not
Same
like
same amount
really.
of touchdowns too, right?
Yeah, 7, correct.
Yeah.
And Debo Samuel's going to get an increase of 5 targets from 89 to 94, but finish with 923 yards, which would be an increase, and finish with 6 touchdowns. I'm having a tough time putting all this together. Again, math is hard, but this one just like from the outset doesn't exactly make that much sense to me. Now, one more thing I want to point out. Last season, Christian McCaffrey had 67 receptions. He's projected for 67 receptions on 83 targets. That is literally what he got last season. Literally the same amount of both. 83, 67, 7 touchdowns, this time only 4. Last season, 564 yards, 527. I don't know how you get to exactly landing on 83 targets and again 67 receptions. Maybe there's a formula here that we don't know, but it's kind of spooky to just say, "Hey, he's gonna do exactly what he
Yeah,
did
it's
last
just
year in the
same
past."
exact.
It's copy and paste. Hey, way to go
What
out
did
on
he
the
do
limb there.
last year? All right, that looks good.
That looks
That
good.
seems in
You
the
know what?
wheelhouse.
Put it up. Put it up. It's
Throw it
the
up there.
same exact
I got
number.
31 more of these things to put out. That's fine. We'll fly with that. It seems
And
believable.
and funny enough, Christian McCaffrey is going to get 9 less rushing attempts and finish with 12 touchdowns last year, 14 touchdowns. Pretty funny to me, just the way that we're coming to this. Again, I respect Mike Clay's work. I think that he actually knows ball, but he's got the 49ers wrapping this thing up at 15 weeks and not having to play, or 15 games and not having to play the last 2. He obviously suspects that Christian McCaffrey is going to miss a game with 14 games. Same for Debo Samuel. But this is all just, again, a fun way
The
to pass
game
the time
total
for
thing
content.
is what's really like because obviously, if they're playing 17 games, all these numbers rise.
Mhm.
So it's
Yeah.
like why are they anyways, it's fun to look at this hypothetical. I want to throw at you, I guess we have to have some kind of Trey Lance in every training camp. This year it apparently is Ricky Pearsall.
Mhm.
So if Ricky Pearsall comes out next season and puts up 29 receptions, 385 yards, and 3 touchdowns, how would you interpret that season for him?
Well, first off, give me the over on those receptions. Give me the over. But that would just be obviously based on snap counts, right? I mean, look, you have Juwan Jennings with 15 receptions, a second round tender for Juwan Jennings, and 15 receptions, probably all of them for third down conversions or in the red zone. I don't know. That seems a bit low, in my opinion. Especially if you're looking at this and you think that Debo Samuel is going to be injured for 1 week because it Pearsall would have to be blowing people away to start over Juwan Jennings or be in there a lot more than him, right? I look back at that Minnesota game, and that was one of the film breakdowns that I did. It was Juwan Jennings, and the way that they didn't have him split out wide. They put him in a condensed split a little bit closer, so they could make up for his lack of speed and put him in position to get into the throwing lanes that Brock wants to get him to. So
Oh,
I have a hard time with this one because if Debo Samuel misses a game, which I think we can all agree most likely will happen. We don't want it to happen, but based on his physical nature and past, we can think that. But then I have a tough time seeing how, if Debo isn't in there, how Juwan Jennings doesn't get a little bit of a bump and a little bit more of throwing. That one's tough. And definitely give me the over on the 29 receptions for Ricky Pearsall, because last season, Juwan Jennings had, I believe, 25 or 27, if I'm not mistaken. Matter of fact, I've got it right in front of me. Why am I even trying to? He had 19 receptions. 19. So he would have 4 less this year. I would definitely say that Ricky Pearsall will exceed the 19 and the 29 that he's being put in right now.
Yeah, if he's being used as the primary number 3 wide receiver, and you're going up in attempted passes, you would again have to assume that number also goes up. And again, I feel like the game totals are messing with my head, because obviously that 385 could get to 500 really quickly if you have a 17 game sample size, and that 3 touchdowns could be 5 as well, which would look a lot better, I think, So I think you said something though about Juwan, about how he's utilized and how he's schemed open. I feel like there's a lot of conversation about Ricky Pearsall right now and what he is as a player, which is fair. It's part of the evaluation process. But what I don't hear is Kyle Shanahan and the rest of the offense input into how players actually are used on the field. Like, also, too, it's like, I don't even know if you have these numbers. Would you know how many teams, like what the percentage of press man coverage is used against Kyle Shanahan's offense? Like, I can't imagine it would be over 50% a game.
That I don't know. I just know that 3 wide receiver sets the 49ers rank right above the Atlanta Falcons for the least amount.
Right.
They
don't like running 3. They don't. That's not their bread and butter.
No, that's not how they do it.
Do you feel like we could see more of that this year?
I would love that. And I think, again, if we are turning this thing over to Brock and Kyle is putting all this trust into Brock, how could you not? And what you kind of see is, and you hope for, is a little bit of evolution in terms of everyone's selling out to stop the run. We have a quarterback that we trust. We drafted separators. Now, we're going to put the pressure on you. While you think we're going to do this, we've done this historically. This is how defenses want to come out and get you. Now, let's throw a little okie doke on you, because if we can throw the football on you a lot better and take more shots and have bigger chunk plays, then the run game opens up even more. So I wonder if there's a change in that way of maybe more first down passes to get everything going, aside from the 49ers being like one of the most run first teams on first down. But the evolution, because everyone knows you're a run first team. Everyone has known that. And I think for sure, if you're turning this thing over to Brock and you have trust in Brock and you drafted these separators, a lot of people can look at that and say, well, these guys are for the future. But I think Ricky Pearsall and Jacob Cowing being here make this receiver room deeper today, even without one snap. Because when Deebo Samuel goes down, you don't have to look at Ray McCloud and say, get out there way more. You don't have to look at Chris Conley and say, get out there way more. I would rather take Ricky Pearsall and Jacob Cowing, giving them the extra depth in that room and having to see them step into those roles more than I would like to see Ray McCloud or Chris Conley or anyone else, or Willie Snead, who needs to play all of a sudden. Like I think we're forgetting how after Deebo Samuel and Juwan Jennings, the wide receiver room gets hairy, very hairy. So I think, again, the Pearsall and Cowing thing can be looked as the future, but they give you depth right now. And if you have separators right now, why wouldn't you turn it over a little bit more to a little bit more of an open passing attack? And it doesn't have to lean pass first, run second, but just more attempts and actually now threatening the defense with verticality.
Well, also, too, with that thought process, you're also lightening the box. And I think that is a huge element to be able to open up more running lanes, especially for a guy like Christian McCaffrey, who needs a sliver of space to be able to maneuver through these gaps. But if you give him, you take some of the safeties out of the box, you now put a nickel cornerback on the field opposed to an extra linebacker. You, I really do feel like Kyle should be cooking an offense that is more predicated on spreading the ball out formationally. You know what I mean? Like, he's been such a compact kind of guy, tight splits, two tight ends, fullback, which is kind of like the old school traditional, right? And he's played a lot more gap scheme in the last couple of years, but I could see them opening back up and also getting back to more outside zone out of shotgun, where you have the ability with guys. And like, I look at Isaac Guerrero, and when I see from him is his ability to run horizontally, very similar to Raheem Mostert, and then finding the hole and one cut turns on the burners. And that's what Raheem was so good at, and why he was able to be so good in the outside zone is because he could stretch vertically. We don't have, like, obviously Christian can, but like when you look at least when I look at guys like Elijah Mitchell, I see him more as a downhill one cut kind of a guy, less more stretch. How, remember Le'Veon Bell would kind of chill in that first gear, and he would just kind of ride, and then the hole would open. He's like, all right, 1 foot, boom, shifts into another gear, pop, 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 gone. Like, I feel like if you can do that out of shotgun, you can do that out of 3 wide, and you open up more running lanes. You can have wider splits with your offensive linemen, so you can stretch the line of scrimmage. I feel like that's where Kyle, like, if I'm Kyle, that's where I hope Kyle is headed. I should say it that way.
Right. And then the other thing is what we forget about Mostert, and while it wasn't something that was huge in his game, was catching an angle route out of the backfield and turning on the jets and being gone. That's something Guerrero can do as well too. I mean, an easy, simple completion, that's free money, and then you put it in the hands of somebody who has that acceleration to go past people. It's just, again, when I look at this draft and I look at the way the 49ers have built their offense and the offensive people, one thing jumps out at you from the receivers, separation. The other thing is speed. And again, that's something that I think they're lacking a little bit, or they're missing. Like, Deebo Samuel has another gear, right? I think we all understand that he has another gear when he has the ball in his hands. But he's not straight line fast. Brandon Ayuk isn't straight line fast, but he creates separation, and he's fast enough to run away from people. But I do think they're missing that absolute speed demon stuff. And I think when you look around the league and you're starting to see, well, look at Miami, Waddle, Hill, Mostert, right? Fastest team in the league. You're starting to look around at other teams, weaponizing speed and putting pressure on defenses. It does feel like there's a little bit of, hey, we're not keeping up with the times, but we want to have that same sort of problem to offer other defenses as well, too, on top of having a hyper-efficient offense with a quarterback that understands and can operate this offense at the level that he has.
Absolutely. So the way that I'm looking at it is, I think there's evolution coming towards the 49ers. And also, too, like, if you really think about it and you try to project out what life looks like with potentially a $50 million per year Brock Purdy, you're going to have to put the ball in his hands more. So time to start. So anything else you want to look at with these projections? Anything you wanted to point out?
I mean, nobody really cares about the defensive projections, right? But I mean,
no one cares about the defense.
I mean, if you want to go ahead and just hop on over,
I'm just gonna look. Let me see if anything pops out to me.
Javon Hargrave 6 sacks would be great.
Phenomenal.
That would be, and it's Malik Collins, right? Malik Collins.
Is it? It's not Malik. It's Malik.
I don't think it is either. I got corrected. Fine. We're just gonna say Collins 4.1. So that's basically 4 sacks. Jordan Elliott, NBC beat writer and defensive interior defensive lineman, almost 2 sacks. Nick Bosa 10 sacks would be incredible.
T.Y. McGill 0.2 sacks. You love to see it.
That means he's getting 0. We're gonna round down. 10 for Nick Bosa. That would be good. I'd like to see a little bit more, but hey, that's just me being greedy. 7.5 for Leonard Floyd would be perfect, especially when you look at the snap discrepancy between Bosa, who's going to be on the field every down, and Leonard Floyd, who would be hypothetically a situational pass rusher. 7.5 sacks is great out of that snap count, right?
Can I
Drake
tell you what I
Jackson,
don't love?
what Drake or Yitzhak Gross Matos only
I
having
don't love
267 snaps. Yeah,
that. What is he making this year? $10 million a year, and you're going to play
yeah,
him
no, that
267
I
times?
don't think
Nah,
that's going to happen. I think you see him a
nah.
little bit more in base
There's
and
no way
sub.
Jordan Elliott, all due respect to NBC Sports beat writer, he's not out snapping you to Gross Matos. That's the way
I
that
don't
I'm
think so
looking.
either. I don't think so either. Jordan Elliott's going to be on those obvious passing downs. I mean, obvious rushing downs as a rotational guy.
Yeah,
Like
he's
that.
pure
That's
rotational. That's
right. So I
Yeater
think
for me is going to either it's going to be Malik Collins rushing or it's going to be Yeater rushing all over the guard. That's the way that I'm looking at it.
And again, we talk about the comparisons to Menahue, inside, outside. I think that just makes them all the more flexible, where you could see Gross Matos and Leonard Floyd on the field and passing downs at times. It all depends on how he plays. So, yeah, I agree. 267 snaps is a little low. Obviously, you'd love to see growth from Drake Jackson. I'm becoming less and less optimistic that we're going to see it.
This is a huge year for him. It's
Oh,
a
this is it. This is
huge
it.
year.
This is it. This is
It
it.
is.
I mean, we always want to evaluate players for 3 years, but unfortunately, he hasn't added anything to the bag. The injuries obviously don't help, but you have to add more at this level. It can't just be speed. You have to get into your rushing bag. This is where Chris Coster's got to unlock that. So, with linebackers, I think the way he's looking at it is that he doesn't believe Dre Greenlaw is obviously going to be ready for week 1. Now, it doesn't say how many games played.
Still 452 snaps. That's not
452 snaps is not bad. So look, if we're looking at it like this, and he's a base down guy, he's a sub package guy, right? So it'll be Warner and Greenlaw. It sounds to me that if they're going to be playing 15 games, he believes he plays in about 6 or 7. So take that for what it's worth. Again, Mike Clay's not a doctor. I think he's just doing his best to surmise. Like,
he's doing this for all 32 teams too. I can't even wrap my head around like how you can project every single player damn near on a 53-man roster. That's
correct. Wild. Now, 49ers avert your eyes. Charvarius Ward.
It already popped right out at me.
Charvarius Ward, Diamador Lenore, obviously taking the most snaps. The third most snaps.
No.
Ambry Thomas. Now, Renardo Green, Rock Ya-Sin, Isaac Yidium. I have a hard time seeing Ambry Thomas jump any one of those guys if they choose them to play outside corner and kick Lenore inside. It
100%.
just looks hard. It just looks difficult to do that when the 49ers have basically told you what they think of Ambry Thomas by not only drafting Renardo Green, which could be a best players available scenario because they did want Roger Rosengarten in that spot, but bringing in Rock Ya-Sin, bringing in Yidium, literally bringing in as many people as they can to get out there and give them competition. I have a hard time thinking that they really believe in Ambry Thomas just based on the way that they've tried to insulate themselves at the position.
I mean, listen, I was the guy like telling everyone, be patient with Ambry, be patient, give him some time, give him some runway, let him get his footing. We've seen it, and it's been nothing but just steps backwards. So for me, Ambry Thomas is a prime cut candidate, let alone being the number 3 cornerback. Like, obviously, after Lenore and Ward, it's TBD of who's going to step into that role as the third guy. Obviously, Renardo Green and probably Isaac Yidium are leaders in the clubhouse for that. But I can't see it being Ambry. Like, they needed someone, and they eventually did turn to him, but then they were like, yeah, we'll put Logan Ryan out there. Like, it's like in the biggest moment, they don't trust him in the biggest moment. What are we doing here? Like, why are we wasting our time? Like, let's call it what it is. 3rd round pick didn't work out. Just cut your losses, move on.
Ambry Thomas, Drake Jackson, Danny Gray, you're on the clock.
Yeah.
All 3 of you are on the clock. This training camp is crucial to see. I mean, just you've got to see something. You've got to see something. It's not impossible for those 3, but it would take a massive leap from Danny Gray. It would take a significant jump from Ambry Thomas. Now, I wouldn't say massive, and it would take a significant jump from Drake Jackson, in my opinion, for them to be impact players and or stick around on this roster.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun training camp. Looking
Oh
forward
yeah.
to it. Finally get to talk some real football. The projections are fun and all, but nothing beats the real thing. Anything else you wanted to touch on before we get out of here for today?
No, this is fun. I think what's cool is we got to figure out whether these joint practices are actually going to be open to the public, because for the first time we may be able to actually record practice if we go. There won't be someone yelling, "Get off your phone, man! Hey, I see you."
They better.
Yeah.
Oh, this is top secret information. Don't
Yeah,
record this one-on-one.
because the
come on,
Rams and
man.
Packers defensive coordinators are certainly following me on Twitter, and they're just gonna be like, "Look what they're running, man! It's basic install. It's basic install and training camp." We're not giving away trade secrets if we can record that. Like, honestly,
No,
they're not
some
gonna be.
coach is going to be like, ooh, if they cut him and they try
Right.
to move him, like slide him through to the practice squad. No, this clip
Well,
showed him.
that might be it.
I mean, that could happen.
That might be it. That might be it. But other than that, they're not going to be running the annexation of Puerto Rico in practice and giving away trade secrets or something like that, But that is a good point about players. See, always the level-headed one, Brad, as usual.
Listen, there's always room to evaluate anything. They'd find a way. But man, when I was able to record those joint practices in Minnesota, man, and you the year before with the Chargers,
and Mostert gets the first play and he just takes it to the crib. Like, that's one of my most viewed videos. I was just like, this is incredible, man.
So good. It's like, why can't we do this all the time, man? We'd be through the roof.
What the hell?
Players don't want to see us succeed, but
they only want to see Rita Oak and Steph Sanchez succeed as creator.
Shout out Rita Oak. Shout out
Steph one more time. I'm so proud of you, buddy. That was the best part. I was so shocked, man. I'm so happy for Steph, man. And shout out to the 49ers for recognizing content creators, man. What a story.
For real, like 100%. On a serious note, like that's super cool. And it's like you look across the NFL, there was content creators in a lot of different. They know where this is going. They know where this is. They know.
Even the Dallas Cowboys, like when the Dallas Cowboys one was pretty cool, right? Like they're better at schedule releases than they are being good at football. But they like called like a Saints fan who's like a big influencer, the Steelers as well too. And then like the funniest part was when they called John Wall on the bye week, and he was like, "What the hell?" Like I was like, "Damn!" I was like, "Why did they cook John Wall like that?"
No, it was pretty good.
It was
pretty good. But I love the synergy of the release, like it, because 49ers content creators, man, like we are kind of like a ground floor little thing. And so for the 49ers to kind of prop that up a little bit, and Steph, especially Steph, man, like going back to like all the situations of her first doing the videos, you and her running into John Lynch, at the bar, and then him recognizing her and telling her to do it on the spot. Like
that's where it all started.
And then it all leading to this, you had Bosa, speak on it. Then you had John Lynch bring it up again at the owners meeting, I think it was.
Yeah.
And then I love the backstory to it. Like it's fantastic. So I love it. I love it.
It all started at the combine, when that happened, right? Like you said, and everything. And then if you listen to Steph, I implore you guys to go watch her stream right after it came out. She talks about how they reached out and they flew her out draft weekend to do everything. Like they had her run on the field. She has a behind the scenes reel
with the big ass graphic on the
that says "Welcome Steph Sanchez." Man, stop playing with Steph, man.
What a W, man.
Hell yeah, I love that, man. She's again, I say this about everybody. It's the line that I always use. As good as she is as a podcaster analyst, she's an even better friend. So proud of you, Steph, man. Love that for you, and really happy that you were able to do that, man. It's so cool to see, like, and just see the growth, man. I love the people that I believe in, and she deserves all of the accolades.
100%. Like that's why, like her and Rita, putting on for the content creator community, man. Like I think it's a win for everyone. Like it's obviously a huge W for both of them, and they did phenomenal work. But again, it's just continuing to amplify this niche thing that we're doing. and how much weight it really carries. So it made me happy. I was so hyped. I was like,
Yep.
I didn't expect it at all. And I was like, what are they going to do with Bosa? Because we knew something was coming with Bosa, which I thought was a good tease to it. And then it was Steph. And I'm like, Steph.
She's insane for keeping that secret.
Good for her.
I mean, they asked her to, obviously.
Of course they did. They said, don't tell a damn soul.
You know, they would have told my blabbermouth ass. Yeah, exactly. If she would have told my blabbermouth ass, I would have been like, hey, look, I'm Steph Sanchez. I would have just ruined it like a dork.
We're out here we're alluding to it, but not actually saying it.
I emoji Steph Sanchez. And yeah, it's like, no, they did the right thing, man, honestly. And Steph is very mature. But, you know, man, I'd have a tough time holding on to that one, man.
Yeah, absolutely. But shout out to everyone for tapping in for State of the Franchise. Again, juices are flowing for the 2024 season. I'm, really getting beyond like the hangover. The hangover was real, but it's definitely getting more excited for the upcoming year. We'll have OTAs next week, I believe. So I'm actually heading right after this. I am going to the Dwight Clark event.
Nice.
So I'll be covering that as media. I have no idea what that is going to entail, but hopefully we'll have some more good content. Maybe be able to talk to Brock, Steve, Alex, and Jeff Garcia. So that will be pretty cool, and we'll just see what happens. Probably get a nice little cameo from Kyle Shanahan like we did last year, but we'll find out. So I'll have more content coming later tonight. Do you got anything else cooking up this week?
No, tomorrow, look out on Niners Nation. I'm finishing up. I'm continuing the film breakdowns. So I've done 2 with passing concepts. This one's going to be about the run game. So that'll be there with clips and diagrams and everything. I'll probably do a live tomorrow to just, explain it all, because people seem to like, drawing up the diagrams and showing all that stuff. So if you guys have been enjoying the last 2 film breakdowns, go ahead and check those out on the channel. The first one is labeled 4 passing concepts that can work for Ricky Pearsall and Jacob Cowing. And the other one are just my favorite passing concepts, which highlight how well Brock Purdy is doing and kind of what you're seeing with the defenses. So just trying to keep the content about actual football and not hypotheticals and stuff like that, So again, and trying to keep myself busy and just learn a little bit more, so I don't get overreactive and out of the window why certain things don't happen.
And you don't start ranking Brock Purdy in the top 10 and get people yelling at you. Where
Brock Purdy is absolutely a top 10 quarterback. That is indisputable. That is it. I'm not arguing that with anyone.
Hey, great way to end the show. Throwback says, make sure y'all hit that like button, subscribe to both channels, do exactly what he says, and we'll probably be coming back to you next week to talk OTAs and more 49ers football. So we're getting close, but I appreciate everyone for tapping in. Smash that like button. We're out for now. Peace. That's Jason Aponte. I'm Brad Graham. We're going to get into it. That's Jason Aponte. I'm Brad Graham. We're going to get into it all right now.